Hello guys and welcome back. This is Mr. Siege. Now today I want to kill two birds with one stone. Not literally, but there's two sort of videos or two things I wanted to cover for quite a while that I've not really got round to yet. One of them being, I get this question asked so many times, or at least I used to, is what potential commanders could go or work with an engineering commander and give you one engineering march without having to invest in two engineering commanders. And I've always said, look, just invest low investment in another engineering commander, whether it's 1-1-1-1, because your active skill's going to work. And in other commanders like Mehmed and Caesar, the active skills won't work. Now, I've been looking into it a bit further, and I think that these commanders, or some of these commanders that we have here, could potentially be an excellent option for a low investment engineering march or ranged march, because obviously these aren't engineering commanders. And the other thing I need to get across in this video is we're going to look at a lot of commanders' skills today, and I'm going to explain what sort of skills would work on an engineering march in terms of bastion skills or auxiliary skills in the different KVKs. So I'm going to teach you how to find out what skills would work. I mean, a lot of you guys already know, but there's certain things that are completely different for a ranged march, and like normal attack damage won't work on a ranged march. Basic attacks, anything with a basic attack, we're going to go through it in the video. So guys, stick around, like and subscribe if you haven't already, I'd much appreciate that, and enjoy. So guys, during this video you're going to find out about what skills may work on engineering commanders, like I said. So as I go through, you'll be able to pick it up and work out for yourself the best options in your KVKs for bastion skills or support, support skills and auxiliary skills in Siege of Orleans. But today I want to get to the bottom of what secondary normal commanders could work in a siege march. And now let's start off with this man here, Julius Caesar. Now we've got to ignore the active skills because they aren't going to work on any of these normal commanders. They have to be an engineering commander for the active skills to actually trigger. So on these normal commanders we're only looking at the second, third, fourth and their expertise skill. But again, let's not forget that some of these commanders, just like Julius Caesar, also have a museum buff, and this is where Julius Caesar becomes really good as a secondary commander for ranged marches. His museum buff is fantastic. But let's go through the other skills first. So this second skill, your ranged march will gain 10% damage reduction because the commander's troop takes 10% less damage. Okay, if their troop has less than 60% units remaining, whenever it's hit with a basic attack, okay, you're not going to be getting hit with a basic attack unless they're in melee range, okay? So the second part of the skill will work, but only when another troop's in melee range. And if you're a ranged guy, you don't really want that to happen, okay? But the first part here, you take 10% less damage, that will work. Now, the third skill doesn't work, and the reason this doesn't work is whenever this commander's troop launches a basic attack against a city, but forget the city bit, whenever this commander's troop launches a basic attack, well, ranged commanders don't launch basic attacks, they launch ranged basic attacks. So your ranged march has to launch ranged basic attacks for a skill to pop off. So this was never going to work anyway. And you'll see throughout this video there's a lot of commanders with when it launches a basic attack. Now those skills will never work on a ranged march once you're in tower mode with V formation. However, the fourth skill does work and you can gain a 15% unit capacity. Now obviously this is if you have maxed this skill, which I haven't. Obviously I've done a few re-rolls here because I don't use Julius Caesar for anything else, but I am using him in Canyon at the moment and it's actually been quite successful because I couldn't have 3 siege marches, there's only 4 commanders available for engineering. So I'm trying to spread them out. I've got 3 sets of gear, so I want to try and use 3 marches. Now, where Julius Caesar becomes absolutely fantastic for a secondary commander in a siege march. I say fantastic, like he's not good. He's not as good as an engineering commander, of course, because the active skills are majorly important. But he comes in really handy with his museum buff, which actually gives 20% all damage. 20% all damage is absolutely huge, guys. Honestly, that's going to make a massive difference. Now, you're not going to pair him with a commander like Margaret, however, because Margaret doesn't do a lot of damage anyway. She's more of a support commander. But you could easily pair him with Cordoba or Babur and even Garjamada. Now, the extra bonus we're getting here is 20% march speed, which is also a fantastic thing to have on your siege march, because siege units are generally a little bit slow. Now, I know if you've got full siege gear, full crit and all that, it's going to be pretty fast. But this extra 20% march speed makes a huge difference. So that's Julius Caesar. Now, let's look at the second commander that could be a decent impact with a siege march, and that's Mehmed. So, Mehmed's first skill, well, second skill that would actually work, is the commander's troop gains 20% attack and deals 20% more skill damage. Right, so you're only going to gain from the 20% attack. You can't deal more skill damage as a ranged commander because you deal ranged direct damage, ranged skill damage, okay? So normal skill damage you won't get the boost from, but you do get the 20% attack. His third skill does not work, this one, unfortunately, because again, the commander's troops launching a basic attack. Ranged troops don't launch basic attacks, they launch ranged basic attacks, as explained before. Now, you can get the unit capacity, so you can get 10% unit capacity, which is also a decent amount. Not the best though. You're going to see with the next commander, that's even better. Now, the rallied army doesn't matter. You're not probably going to launch rallies with these. I mean, you could do if you were attacking a city. It actually could be a great option with Babur when you're rallying a city, and it does work. I've seen some great reports actually. Now, the expertise also doesn't work because obviously that's part of the active skill. That just buffs the active skill, so that's not important. So if you have got this commander, if you can go 1-5-1-5 potentially, that would be great for your ranged march. Okay, now it doesn't end there with Mehmed. Again, we looked at the museum buffs, and Mehmed also gains 30% health with his museum buff, which is kind of great. 30% health can never be ignored. Now, again, he's got skill damage, but that's not going to take into effect because I believe this skill damage won't work. I know it's not the same as what's in the descriptions of all the commanders. I know it doesn't say range skill damage, but maybe there's something here that actually might work. Maybe something worth me testing out, okay? But it shouldn't work in theory. Now, the next commander we want to look at is actually an epic commander that everyone can get their hands on. This could be a very cheap, easy investment if you paired with Cordoba. Now, forget the active skill again. The second skill also doesn't have any effect, won't work. But the third skill actually gives you 60% worth of stats, health and defense, which is kind of huge. And not only that, but you benefit from 15% unit capacity on the fourth skill. So Matilda of Flanders is actually really strong with another ranged commander. As long as you're not going to get swarmed and stuff, okay, it's not really going to help. You will want to be on the field for quite a while to generate a decent amount of kills. Now, the expertise also doesn't work because it's a gathering effect. Now, the next commander I want to talk about is Alex. So surprisingly, Alexander the Great, looking kind of strange here with the new update. I must admit, not a fan of Alex at all with this one, but maybe it'll grow on me. So he's actually got 2 skills that could be quite useful here, and it comes in this second skill. So if the commander's troop is on the map, okay, now that's a possibility. Their troop is immune to all damage reducing debuffs. Okay, so this will actually work. You know, you won't get any damage reducing debuffs on your march. Whenever the troop launches a basic attack, again, this part of the skill will not work, unfortunately, guys. So the next skill won't work either, because because obviously it's infantry. But this skill here, the 4th skill, will work. So if the commander's troop does not have a shield, it gains 40% attack. Okay, so generally your ranged march won't have a shield. And if it does have a shield though, you gain 30% defense. But that 40% attack is quite nice. This won't work either, the expertise. Now Alex also has a museum buff, but I believe that also will have no effect. Okay, so infantry defense, no. Normal damage reduction, again, that will work, but only at melee range, because it's not ranged normal damage reduction. Kind of pointless. Now, the next commander, and kind of a surprising one here also, a commander that will actually work, and I'm using in my Canyon team now, with an engineering commander, is Richard I. So, Richard I could actually be quite good with Margaret or Gorgia Marder. I'd either pair with one of those, and the reason for that is, yes, your troop deals 10% more counterattack damage. Again, that's only going to work at melee range because it's not ranged counterattack damage, but they will take 15% less damage, so they're going to be a lot more tanky. The main skill here that's really going to help out with your Margaret and Gorgia is any healing this commander's troop receives is increased by 30%. So Margaret and Gorgia Marder both have a small heal, especially Gorgia Marder because he's got healing in his actual skill set, his talent tree. So that's going to increase the healing by 30%, which is quite useful. Now his museum buff is another 6% counterattack, which again, it's fine if you're getting swarmed. It is going to get you a few more kills, of course. It's okay. Okay, this is going to be a little bit more tankier and a little bit more survivability on the field, but it's not giving you any damage. So for me, I'm pairing with Gorgia Marder because Gorgia Marder's active skill does give out a bit of damage. Margaret's is a little bit lackluster, to be honest. 600 damage factor, kind of poor. You're not going to benefit from this 50% more ranged normal damage, really. So I'm going to be keeping Margaret and Cordoba together because they just work so well. Baba and Gorgia Marder are easier to split up. Now the next one I'll talk about is Aethel. Now there's a couple of skills here that would work, and first of all, the 20% takes 20% less counterattack damage. Again, that's only going to be affecting melee range, so it's not massively important. It's rarely going to come into effect. Forget the next couple of skills because you're not going to be launching rallies really, and you don't want 3 unit types. But the active skill is actually a passive skill, so passive skills will work. And this commander's troop deals 20% more damage to enemy troops that have been slowed. And you may think, okay, but you have to be slowed. Well, Margaret and Gorgia Marder both have a slow effect, and it lasts for 3 seconds on Gorgia Marder here, but it has got a cooldown of 10 seconds. So although it's a high amount of all damage here on Aethel, it's not going to trigger that often. You might get lucky on other commanders in the field that have been slowed that you are hitting. I mean, there's quite a lot of commanders that do slow down troops now. I think Huo actually launches slows as well, can do a slow effect as well. So yeah, that could come into effect quite often, but it's not like Julius Caesar, which is doing 20% all damage all the time. You know, that is just really great. So the next commander, we're going to have to go down a few more here. We've got a lot of epic commanders and commanders we're not really investing much into. The next one is Mulan. A bit of an honourable mention here because we're getting to some commanders that potentially aren't that amazing, and you're probably not going to have a max. You don't want to put universal heads into these commanders because these are gold key commanders. Now, Mulan's second skill does work, but they have to be surrounded, so it's always at melee range. It's kind of pointless really. And fourth skill, this commander's troop gains 20% attack. Okay, it's not huge. It's not huge at all. Whenever this commander uses an active skill, but it has to be this commander, okay? It's not your troop using active skill, it's this commander. So I believe the second part of this skill doesn't work. Okay, you've got to be careful with that also when you're looking at like your support skills, your bastion skills, your auxiliary skills. So it's okay, but the relic also gives you 20% health and a 15% skill damage reduction. The skill damage reduction will only be in effect when you're getting hit again at melee, because obviously then you're going to be receiving skill damage. You're not going to be receiving that at range. Next we have Trajan. Whereas we're getting through a lot of commanders here that really aren't that great, potentially being secondaries here. So Trajan is an option. Now his second skill will give 20% defense and 20% health. It just says this commander's troop gains that. While obviously you have to be outside Alliance territory, okay, to get the health, which you could be a lot of the time. You know, there's a high chance of that. Now the next skill that work on Trajan would be this passive skill here. You get a 10% unit capacity, and as you know, that's a decent amount. It's very useful. Now you're not really going to mix your troops with 3 different unit types, because then you're going to be losing out on some of the talents of the engineering commanders here. I don't know if you could just put, you know, one archer troop or one infantry as well, and get these bonuses. But obviously when they die in battle, well, then it will be 100% siege march. Now that is just beyond my realm. I don't want to delve into that too much, but that could be a potential option. The next one, surprisingly, is Osman. Okay, another epic commander I've not even invested massively in, but with Osman, his third skill, 1 second after this commander's troop uses an active skill. Okay, so 1 second after this commander's troop uses an active skill, it deals an additional damage to its current target. Now, again, I'm not sure if this commander's troop is the whole army. So obviously, because Osman himself isn't going to be launching active skills, but the primary commander is. So I think this could work, but I'm going to have to test it. Someone else can obviously test it too if they wanted to. They can put him into range and see if this actually triggers. But he could actually do an additional 400 damage factor, which isn't bad. When you look at obviously Margaret's active skill, which we looked at before, that was only 600 damage factor, and that's halved at, you know, Margaret's is halved at range. This wouldn't be halved at range. So if this did work, that's kind of good, really. It's not bad. And Osman also gets a 10% unit capacity. Although nothing else works, his expertise won't work, and he's got no museum relic either. Next commander, which again is not amazing, but we've got Hera. So if you do have Hera, he could be actually a very good option. Now this commander gains 30% health. Obviously, if you've got this skill to level 5, and the rest of it doesn't matter because he's not really going to be serving as a garrison. Although there's no reason why he couldn't serve as a garrison with an engineering commander. It could actually be really strong. His third skill, forget about the skill damage. It's not doing range skill damage. But whenever their troop uses an active skill, so the troop as a whole, I believe, it gains a damage absorbing mighty shield for 3 seconds. So if your ranged march gets a mighty shield for 400 damage factor for 3 seconds, that again could be quite useful. You're going to be taking less damage. Those white numbers will be reduced slightly, and there's a cooldown of 8 seconds. So every 8 seconds you're going to get a shield, which I'm not against. I'm not against at all. Now this fourth skill, if this commander's troop is garrison commander, that's not going to matter. If this commander's troop has a shield, which you can have a shield, whenever it's hit with a basic attack, okay, now whenever you hit with a basic attack, that is only if you're being attacked at melee range as well. But it has a 30% chance to deal direct damage factor 1000. So if someone does come and attack you, you are going to deal a bit of extra damage, or you got a potential chance of dealing a bit of extra damage if he's in the troop. Expertise doesn't work. Now, what I found out the other day is I think this commander could be so good as a secondary to an engineering commander, and that's actually Honda Tadakatsu. And his second skill will give you 10% attack and 20% march speed, but also their troop gains an extra 30% attack when attacking another troop. You're going to be attacking another troop pretty much all the time as a ranged march, to be honest. So you're getting 40% attack here and 20% march speed. That's huge. Now on his third skill, this commander's troop takes 5% less damage. Again, really nice. You're getting less severes in your hospital. Whenever the troop uses an active skill for the next 2 seconds, the target takes an additional damage every second. So this is double. So they're going to take an extra 400 additional damage factor. Not halved at melee range, guys. Okay, because it's not listed in the skill. And the target loses 50% march speed. which is absolutely massive. So your ranged march can be doing this. All of this is kind of huge. As long as this, where their troop uses an active skill. Now, is their troop means the troop as a whole? You know, it doesn't say this commander's troop. It says their troop. So maybe need some confirmation on that part for this part of the skill. And I'm going to go out and test this, okay guys? I'm going to test some of these commanders out at some point. Even this works, okay? So we've got the second, third and fourth skill will actually work, and it's just a unit capacity, 10% unit capacity. But again, like I said before, that's quite nice. Now, you could mix the troops to get the skill. No, it's not going to work. Skill damage won't work. It's not range skill damage, okay? As I explained before. Now, the great thing about Honda also is that his expertise works, because again, it's a passive skill. So whenever this commander's troop is hit with the basic attack, okay, so that means it's only going to be at melee range when you're actually getting attacked. While on the map, the damage is reduced by 30%. So it's going to be rather tanky. This effect can trigger up to 57 times an hour. Okay, so pretty much forever. Yeah, that's going to make your march so tanky. And I think this guy paired with Baba or Gauge Armada could be so strong. Now, if you've maxed this commander and you're thinking of investing in a siege march, go for it. Like, try it out. Max one commander, max Cordoba doing AoE, and see how this performs, because I think it's going to do really well, surprisingly well. Now I've got two more commanders on the list, two more that I've not invested in, and they're both going to be a huge surprise. First of all, Huo Qubing. Now Huo's third skill, if this commander's troop has been on the map for more than 30 seconds, okay, that's more than likely. Your siege march is going to be out for a while. Okay, has fought his one battle already. That's again huge chance. Or has triggered the autumn wind. Okay, you can get that from the expertise, which go on to in a minute. So for the first 15 seconds of entering combat, the troop deals 10% more skill damage. Doesn't matter, but it actually requires 50% less rage to use an active skill. This is actually going to make the active skill of your primary commander pop off a bit quicker. At least that's what I'm led to believe. Now, not only that, but Huo's fourth skill would work. So if the commander's troop is attacking another troop on the map, again you're going to be, their troop recovers a portion of slightly wounded units. But healing factor 1500 is huge. And not only that, if you have the expertise, you're going to get the autumn wind effect. Okay, it will trigger, their troop triggers the autumn wind effect and recovers a portion of slightly wounded units. Healing factor 3000, massive. So this could be like just an extra really tanky commander with all that healing. Your troop could last so long. You know, pairing with Cordoba or something, they're going to last forever. You know, that could easily work. Something to bear in mind, if you're maxed to Cordoba and you have a maxed Huo, you're probably going to be. The trouble is, you're probably going to be using Huo in another march. You're not going to be using him in a ranged march, because if you've got a certain amount of marches on the field, like 3 or 4 marches, Huo's going to be a part of one of them. He's just going to be, you know, slapping on the field in his own right, in his own cavalry troop. A new commander that has obviously landed in the game very recently, Shajar al-Durr. Now, her healing is immense, and I think it could be fantastic with a ranged march. Possibly the best secondary commander pairing in the game for an engineering march. And on the third skill, if this commander's troop is in a field troop, which it will be, yes, it's going to take 5% less normal damage. Now, again, it's normal damage, not ranged normal damage. So a lot of these commanders you see do more normal damage or take less normal damage. That won't work because it has to be ranged normal damage. But you can take less normal damage if you're in melee range of that troop that's attacking you with normal damage. Whenever their troop uses an active skill, it mighty heals up to 3 nearby allied or friendly troops, including this commander's troop. Mighty healing 500, which is actually quite nice. It's similar to Gauge Armada. So not only will this troop heal itself a little bit, but your other ranged marches or other field marches nearby, including your own, will also get mighty healed. Imagine that. And not only this, but from the 4th skill, the commander's troop takes 20% less damage, which is hugely tanky. But that's not the only part of this skill that works. So again, while this commander's troop is on the map, whenever it is reduced to 60% units remaining, okay, which eventually it will do, it'll be mighty healed for a large portion of its slightly wounded units, healing factor 5000. So once it's dropped down to 60%, it's going to give you a massive amount of healing, which is just going to boost you back up, and you can fight on the field for a bit longer. But then, also for the next 8 seconds, their troop loses 40% attack, okay, which is kind of a bummer, but it takes 20% less damage too, so it is going to be even more tankier. And again, that only lasts for 8 seconds, so it's not a huge amount to be losing that attack. And again, this skill can trigger once per hour, so you're going to be returning to the city before that end. Now, that's looking really good so far, really tanky, and a great amount of healing. But not only that, her active skill works, and not only for herself again, but whenever this commander's troop heals another troop, which it will do, for the next 3 seconds the healed troop's going to gain 10% defense. Dealing more normal damage won't matter for your ranged march, but if it does end up that you healed a melee troop, your infantry, cavalry or archer, then they are going to be dealing more normal damage too. If you're a whale or you have a load of spare heads and you're not using Shajar on the field and you want to use it with the siege march, go for it. I think this could be a great option. Now again, like Huo, you're probably going to be using her on the field with another troop because she's a brand new commander, she's really strong, really tanky, and you're probably not going to want to steal her out of a main march and put her in a ranged march. You're just not going to want to. So now the question is, who do we rate best out of all these commanders to actually work with a ranged march? So I'm going to go back to the top. Now I think the best options are the commanders that are easy to get hold of, and you're probably not going to be using them on the field. So your Caesar, your Mehmed, Matilda. Number 1 I would say would be Caesar, because the 20% all damage is just huge. You get the march speed, you take 10% less damage, and you get troop capacity. Now that's massive. I think that's going to make a huge difference. It's not as good as an engineering march because you're not doing an active skill, but I'd say you're probably halfway there, and halfway there ain't bad, believe me. Now I'd say in second place would probably be Shajar, but you're not going to be using her because you're going to be using her again on an open field march. You're not going to be using her with a ranged march, but it would be great if you had spare head just to get an extra set of commanders out in the field. Obviously, if you wanted to make 4 ranged marches, yeah, I could do that. I could invest in her. I can't, well, I personally can't because I don't have the gold heads to go that far. Then that's a great option. In number 3, though, I would actually put Honda, because a lot of people aren't using Honda on the field now, and all those skills with a 40% attack, 20% march speed, 5% damage reduction, the damage factor, march speed reduction, 10% unit capacity. There's a lot there. Honda's just a fantastic option, and yeah, again, he's not a meta commander now. You're not really going to be using him on the field unless, well, you're a bit behind. He could easily work well with any of these ranged commanders. I'd say I'd just avoid Margaret. I'd avoid pairing Margaret with anyone that's not engineering. But any of these 3 commanders, I think, could work great with these people who were explaining, these commanders we're explaining about now. And yeah, 4th, I'd probably put Mehmed. A decent amount of health. You're probably going to want a bit more health on your ranged march if you're not running an engineering commander as secondary, because it's going to be a little bit weaker. But in a close 5th place, Matilda, really cheap investment. If you've not got Mehmed in the right place, you've not got this last skill to 4 or 5, your Matilda's going to be a better option. These 2 are so close in terms of usability as a secondary to an engineering commander. There's just not much between them. So guys, I hope this has been helpful. And again, we're on about, there's loads more commanders that could work, but very minimal. Okay, very minimal. I've gone through a list of the commanders that could be a decent or substantially amount better out of all the commanders available in the game right now. But again, things to look out for in your support skills, auxiliary skills, is avoid skills with basic attack, launches a basic attack. This will not work. Skill damage, normal damage, again, won't work. Look out for all damage or siege percentage buffs, potential healing buffs that could work, as you've seen. Even Guan's third skill here, whenever their troop exits combat, it recovers a portion of its slightly wounded units. That would work. So in your Orleans KVK, that's actually quite a strong skill to be able to heal every time they're in and out of combat, because as a ranged march you could be entering in and out of combat quite a lot of times. That's going to heal your troops really nicely. So guys, I hope that's helped, and I guess that's all there is to it. So if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. That would be great. Again, thank you so much guys. This was Mr. Siege, and bye bye.